In the previous class, we saw the time-independent Schrodinger's equation for the hydrogen atom. The H psi equal to E psi was solved. We saw how the Hamiltonian is written in the Cartesian XYZ coordinate converted to the spherical polar coordinates r theta phi. And then we solved such that we got two components for it, where you have psi n l m r theta phi is given as the radial component RNL times the angular component YLM, and the RNL component was given as minus n minus L minus 1 the factorial divided by 2n n plus L factorial the whole cube, the entire power 1 by 2 times 2 by n a naught power L plus 3 by 2 times r power L e power minus r by n a naught, and the Laguerre polynomials n plus L 2L plus 1 of 2r by n a naught. We saw this for the first few set of values for n equal to 1, 2 and 3, right? Okay, now that we have seen it, let's continue ahead and then try to see why don't we apply it for the first value, meaning n equal to 1 and L equal to 0. Okay, when you do something like this, you have r 1 0 which is equal to minus, you have n as 1, 1 minus 0 minus 1 the whole factorial divided at 2 times n which is 2 times n plus L, n is 1, L is 0, therefore 1 power 3, so therefore you have 1 times 1 the whole power 1 by 2. Then you have 2 n equal to 1 here, 2 by a naught power 3 by 2, L is 0, r power 0, e power minus r n a naught, L n plus L which is 1, 2L plus 1 is also equal to 1, 2r of a naught. If you might remember, L11 of x was given as minus 1 factorial. So what ends up happening? The R10 will be a minus, and the minus gets becomes plus 1, and then you have a 0 factorial, that's 1. So you have 1 over square root of 2 times 2 root 2 times a naught power 3 by 2, r power 0 becomes 1, e power minus r by n a naught, n is 1, so you have, I can write it as a naught. Okay, so this is the function that ends up coming. So when you simplify this, this ends up becoming 2 by a naught power 3 by 2 e power minus r by a naught. Yeah, so this is what we end up having, where this a naught is the Bohr radius that we had encountered in the classical, or rather transitioning from the classical part to the quantum mechanical aspect of it. So therefore the psi 10 is going to be given by r10 times y, so L value is 0, so that was 0 0, and you might remember y00 just contributes to 1 over 4 pi, square root of 4 pi, 2 pi kind of term, right? You only have this kind of a contribution that ends up coming, right? So therefore what ends up happening, the entire psi just is largely dependent upon r10. Okay, so instead of writing all this, let me just try to look at what r10 gives me. Okay, so the r10 is going to be given by 2 by a naught power 3 by 2 e power minus r by a naught. So this is the function that we end up having. So if you want to not see whether it's normalized, how would we do it? We'd integrate between 0 and infinity r square dr times r10 star r10. In this case, all the functions for the radial part do not have an imaginary part, so the r star times r will be the same. So this will end up being 0 to infinity r square dr 4 by a naught power 3 times e power minus 2r by a naught. This will be nothing but 4 by a naught can be taken out, a naught cube can be taken out, 0 to infinity, you have an r square e power minus 2r by a naught dr. Once if you integrate, you will be able to see what you end up coming. Since these are normalized functions that we are looking at, you will end up getting 1 for this case. Good. So you just quickly revised what we did in the previous lecture. we are able to write the wave functions for the hydrogen atom problem. So let's ask the first question. We were trying to understand what main difference comes up between the Bohr model and that of whatever we are able to determine using quantum mechanics. The first thing that comes up, the probability of finding a particle within a volume element d tau is given by mod psi square d tau, isn't it? So similarly, the probability of finding an electron within a space dr for r10 will be given by the square of whatever we had, which is 4 by a naught power 3 times r square e power 2r by a naught times dr. If you are able to integrate between r to r plus dr, this is the probability of finding the electron within that given volume element. One has to remember this r square is what results in the fact that we cannot find the electron at the nucleus. So what do we mean if we want to plot this? So generally the way people plot it is to plot along the x-axis r by a naught, so that it's a referenced entity, and on the y-axis they end up plotting r square by a naught square times mod r, let's say 10, the whole square divided by a naught. So basically you take the a naught component out of the whole thing. Then when you plot it, you are able to realize these are two different functions. One function is a parabola, that is the r square part. The other part, e power minus 2r by a naught, is an exponentially decaying part. So what will this result in? You are going to get a function that looks little asymmetric and something like this. This is not a Gaussian function, although my drawing might indicate that, but in reality it's an asymmetric function where it's very similar to the Maxwell-Boltzmann, but then Maxwell-Boltzmann has a r square there, minus r square there. We have a minus r only term that is present. So one is able to realize there is a maxima that ends up coming. So the best way to find what is the most probable value of finding the electron at a given r over a naught will nothing but be taking the differential with respect to r and setting that differential equal to 0 to find the values of r. The moment you do this, you will be able to understand what is the most probable value that ends up coming. Okay, so of course you can sit and do that exercise for this case and find what is r. Why don't we do that real quick? So you have 4 by a naught power 3 times d by dr of r square e power minus 2r by a naught, right? So this is a function that we need to differentiate. So this will be, and of course you need to set it to 0. So therefore 4 by a naught cube cannot be equal to 0, and therefore this will be 2r times e power minus 2r by a naught plus r square. When you differentiate exponential functions, you get them back and then they get redifferentiated again, is equal to 0. So what will this end up becoming? 2r e power minus 2r by a naught minus 2r square by a naught e power minus 2r by a naught is equal to 0. This is quite interesting because we can factor a few things out. You can take the 2 out, r minus, actually you can take an r also out, 1 minus r by a naught e power minus 2 r by a naught equal to 0. So when this happens, you are able to see r equal to 0 as a solution. Okay, but of course r equal to 0 implies that, okay, at the point of origin you have nothing, so that's what you are able to see here. On the other hand, you can set this equal to 0, but the moment this becomes equal to 0, the entire function becomes a trivial function, so it doesn't make any sense any further. So therefore we set this equal to 0, so you get something like r equal to a naught. This is essentially why we tend to express everything in terms of a naught, because you are able to understand that when r by a naught is equal to 1, you find the most likely, the most probable value of r by a naught at which you will find this electron. This is quite interesting. So this once again is very close to the Bohr radius, where Bohr said this is exactly stuck within that given radius from the nucleus, which is indeed not true, because if you take a look at this function, you have a distribution that's present before and after this value of r over a naught. Of course, you are plotting the probability, so when you are able to look at it, of course you have the maximum probability wherever, or rather for a small region you find the maximum probability at the Bohr radius, but you do end up seeing the electron that could be present closer than the Bohr radius and farther than the Bohr radius. However, the probability of finding it closer than the Bohr radius reduces significantly, and farther from the Bohr radius also reduces exponentially as you go away from the Bohr radius of a naught. So this is an important conclusion that we end up getting. Okay, we will see the same thing for the R20 value as well, but let's keep this in mind for now. Okay, so now having understood this, we can ask the next question. Okay, if this is the most probable distance at which I'll find the electron for the 1s orbital, next question is, what is my expectation value of r? Remember, this and this could be different, meaning for an asymmetric function, when you have distributions across, what will end up happening, the most probable and the mean would be different. On the other hand, when you take the Gaussian function, the most probable and the mean will be very close to each other, actually will be on top of each other for ideal cases. Okay, since it's an asymmetric function, it will be useful to understand what is the mean, or rather the expectation value of r. This is once again not surprising to you, because you might have seen similar cases for the Maxwell's-Boltzmann distribution of molecular velocities, which is also an asymmetric function. You realize that the RMS velocity, the root mean square versus the most probable versus the mean velocity are all different, right? Which is once again because you are on v square times e power minus alpha v square as a function, which is an asymmetric function. You have something similar here. You have r square times e power minus alpha r that we are plotting. So therefore, it would be quite interesting to determine what is the most probable or the expectation value of r. How would you find this? You would once again do the integral between 0 to infinity. Remember, the integrand is r square dr times the function, and you had already squared the function. The squared function is e power minus 2r by a naught, and remember, there has to be psi star r psi. I've already made mod psi square here. The r has to come. The only way this is possible is because in this case the operator is a multiplication, therefore I was able to write mod r square. So be careful when you do it for regular math type problems. So what this ends up happening gets reduced to 4 by a naught power 3, 0 to infinity r cube e power minus 2r by a naught times dr. This is a simple integral. I'm not going to end up solving this. Of course, you will be given standard integrals in order to solve such problems. You would find you get it at 3 by 2 a naught. This is a very important conclusion that we are able to see. So although we see the most probable position of finding is r by a naught at 1, the average will be something which is at 3 by 2 of a naught. Okay, so the mean is actually a little higher than the maxima that you end up finding for this function. This is also a very important aspect that we need to understand. Although the most likely to find an electron will be at a naught, when you take an average across an ensemble, let's say you have Avogadro number of hydrogen atoms, when you try to take where will you find an electron from the nucleus, you would actually find it's not at a naught, it will be at 3 by 2 a naught. So this is an important aspect of quantum chemistry where one is able to understand, although you have a maxima at some place, when you take a complete average, that ends up being subtly different. Okay, good. So now having understood this, let's try to find the expectation value of some other important function. So let's try to find what is the expectation value of the potential operator, which is u. So once again, how do we end up doing this? 0 to infinity. Since there is no angular component, I'm directly writing whatever we are going to get for the radial component, r square dr. This is the integrand that ends up coming. and you have something like 2 by a naught power 3 by 2 times times e power minus r by a naught, and then the function minus e square by 4 pi epsilon naught r times. Remember, this E square is charge of the electron while this E is the exponent. So this might be a little confusing. I'm sorry about it. But anyways, this is what we end up following. A naught power 3 by 2 E power minus R by A naught. Okay. So this is how you should write it. Psi star operator psi d tau. Of course, I've written d tau up front. Okay, so be careful not to put the r in the middle. Luckily, this is just a multiplication function that makes your life easier, so therefore you can do whatever you want to do. On the other hand, when you have a differential, for instance the kinetic energy, that might be a little tricky, so let's not go there right now. So what ends up happening, you have an r that gets cancelled here. This will be nothing but 4 by a naught power 3, which we are able to take out, and then you also have an e square, which is a square of the charge of the electron, minus e square 4 pi epsilon naught. So you have this that's completely taken out. Integral 0 to infinity, you have r times e power minus 2r by a naught. How does 2r come? E power x times e power x is e power 2x times dr. Once again, you have a standard integral of r power 2n plus 1 times e power minus 2r by a naught. Let's try to simplify this a little further. This will be minus e square by pi epsilon naught a naught cube integral 0 to infinity r e power minus 2r by a naught dr. Yeah, so we end up getting this. So once again, using the standard integral, one will be able to realize that the final answer comes up to e square divided by 4 pi epsilon naught a naught. I am skipping the integration because I am quite confident that you will be able to find the standard integrals and integrate it by yourself. Okay, now having done this, this resembles something to us right away. So let me write some other equation that might help you correlate this. The En was given by e minus e square divided by 8 pi epsilon naught a naught. Okay, over n square. In this case, n is 1. So we are also able to say there's a 1 square here because this n value is equal to 1. So on close examination, you realize the expectation value of the potential is given by 2 times the total energy of the system. This is a very important conclusion that ends up coming because the total energy, average energy, will be given by the average of potential plus average of the kinetic energy. So when you have this kind of an equation, what ends up happening is that let's substitute it back here. So you have u is equal to 2 times average of u plus average of t. So when you quickly rearrange this, you can take this to the left, this to the right hand side while this to the left hand side. So you will get an equation which says the average of potential energy is given by minus 2 times the average of kinetic energy. Wait a minute. So what are we able to see here is that the dependence on the potential are actually can be expressed in terms of total energy or the kinetic energy. This immediately indicates that the total energy can be given as the minus of the kinetic energy. This we have shown only for the R10, which corresponds to the 1s orbital, but this is a common occurrence throughout quantum chemistry, where the kinetic energy is given by the negative part, or if you multiply the total energy by minus 1, you end up getting the kinetic energy. This is an important aspect of quantum mechanics, and this is in general can be applied to any orbital, and this is called the virial theorem. Okay, so this matters a lot and it's valid across atoms and molecules. So therefore, if you're able to determine the average kinetic energy, you know the total energy of the system. Let's say you have a bunch of molecules that you would like to evaluate based on their stability or reactivity. So what one can do is to set up these kind of simulations where you make up the molecules, solve the Schrodinger's equation if you can. We will see soon that why it might not be easy, but let's say we are able to solve it. Once you solve it and you are able to get the average kinetic energy or potential energy, you will be able to understand what is the total energy. At the same time, if you are able to get the average kinetic energy, you will be able to understand what is the total energy. Once you are able to keep or sort these molecules based on their average kinetic or potential energy, you would be able to say what is more stable than the other. So this is what gives us the power of quantum chemistry, giving us an idea what is the wave function. From the wave function, we will be able to predict what is the probability of finding the electron from the nucleus, and on top of it, when you are able to calculate energies, we will be able to sort molecules based on their stability. So this is what gives us the immense power when you are able to understand things from the first principles. I'm sure you'll be using many of these concepts as you go forward and do research in any aspect of chemistry, where you'll be using some part of computational chemistry to predict stabilities, to predict what kind of conformations exist, and you will be able to understand which is the most likely populated state, so as to ensure that the reaction ends up happening. So this forms the entire basis. So we have just shown understood what is the significance of understanding wave function for R10. Why don't we extend it to R20 as well? So this will be going towards the 2s orbital. So instead of spending too much time deriving it, why don't I write the function directly? So you have something like, actually rather than writing R20, we can write psi 200 itself. So you get something like 1 over square root of 32 pi times z over a naught power 3 by 2. Okay, and then you have, remember there's an dependence that comes as 2 minus sigma e power minus sigma by 2. Okay. So now when you have an equation of this sort, right, so what will we end up seeing here is that we will try to understand how this looks when you plot it or even take the differential. Remember, this already factors in the part of the y00 part. Okay, so this is the overall wave function that you end up having. Similarly, when you calculate what is the expectation value of R, you would be amazed to know you will get something like 6a0. What did we find for the psi 100? You got something like 3 by 2 a0. Okay, of course, sit and simply solve this. One can also understand if you take the differential and try to find where the maxima ends up coming. The maxima in this case would have two different variables. This has an r component that goes with it, and you have another r component that comes from r square, right? So remember, there is r square times 2 minus r by 2a0 times e power minus r by 2a0. So this function comes up when you take a differential of u times v times w. Then you have to be very careful when you take this differential, and you will be able to find the maxima that ends up coming. You'll have two maximas in this case because you have an additional function that comes in the r component right here, right? So once you have this, what one is able to appreciate is that as you go farther away in the n value, the average value, or rather the expectation value of r for that given function goes farther away from the Bohr radius. Okay, this is once again a concept that we have exploited several times from our school times, where if you have an electron, as you go farther away in the orbital, it is easy to extract that electron. Of course, we have seen this in terms of ionization energy, where extracting an electron at an outermost orbital many times is easier than that of extracting the electron from an inner orbital, right? This is also the reason why the periodicity comes up when you go from left to right. It becomes a little difficult to extract an electron, because remember, there's a z factor that ends up coming in here. Okay, in the hydrogen atom, z is equal to 1, but as you go from left to right in a periodic table, the value of z, the effective nuclear charge, keeps increasing. So therefore that also plays a component here, which will end up resulting in the electron being little more closer to the nucleus for hydrogenic like type atoms. Okay, this is extremely important. If you are able to solve this for a general equation, when you calculate what is the expectation value of r for any of these Laguerre polynomials, you will realize it will come up as a general function 3 by 2 over a naught times n square. Yeah, so when you have n as equal to 2, you have a 4 divided by 2 will be 2, so therefore you get 6 a naught, and you realize that the expectation value of r keeps going much farther away as you keep increasing the n value. Okay, this is an important revelation. Once we start looking at how the orbitals look, you will appreciate this fact. Okay, and of course don't forget the other r dependence that comes in each of these functions, which results in different kinds of plots than the s orbital. The s orbital, when you plotted something like the probability as a function of r by a naught, you got something like this, where the maxima was found at a naught and the mean was found at 3 by 2 a naught. Yeah. On the other hand, when you end up plotting for this case, you will start getting something that's slightly different, and you actually start going farther away. I have to be careful what I draw here. Not very sure whether it will be less than 1. I have to find the probabilities myself, but you're going to get something like this, where the most probable starts to fall away from a naught. How will you find the most probable? You take the probability, which will be the square of it, and take the first differential with respect to x and set it to 0. Of course, the second differential should be less than 0 for maxima, and therefore you will be able to find the value. Okay, and of course you start to see this is not to scale, so don't be carried away by this. There is actually an extra node that comes for the 2s orbital in addition to the node that is already present in the at the point of the nucleus. Okay, so as you start going farther away, you would realize that the number of radial nodes will be given by n minus l minus. Okay, this matters a lot. So meaning that for the s orbital, for 1s you have n equal to 1, l equal to 0. Because 0, you have 0 nodes apart from the one being in the nucleus, and for the 2s you have 2. We're making a mistake here. Yeah, 2 minus 0 minus 1, you have a single node that ends up coming here. And for a 3s orbital, in a similar way, you're going to have 2 radial nodes. Of course, this is in addition to any angular nodes that might be present. And for the s orbital, since you know y00 is nothing but 1 by square root of 2 pi, you realize there are no nodes that comes up due to the angular part. And as we go to the other orbitals, you will start to see the angular part also contributes to the presence of nodes. So one has to be careful on determining how many nodes are present. So n minus l gives you the number of radial nodes that will be present, and the ylm will give you an understanding of how many angular nodes are present. For instance, if our ylm is equal to cos theta, and theta goes between 0 to pi, you realize that cos theta goes to 0 at theta equal to pi by 2. So there exists an angular node for ylm for the function cos theta at theta equal to pi by 2. On the other hand, when you have the same ylm as sin theta, then you have the angular node that ends up coming at 0 and at pi. These two values will have an angular node. So please be careful, and I hope this lecture helped you understand how to exploit the fact that you have a wave function, how the wave function can help you understand what is the most probable place of finding the electron, and at the same time what is the average distance from the nucleus of finding the electron. And one will be able to understand when putting all this together on how to build up concepts that come with each other. As we go in the next class, we will be able to understand how different orbitals play its own role. Thank you.